Good afternoon, everyone. This is Geraldine Jerry Burton with the Community Technical Assistance Center, and I would like to welcome you to today's webinar, Family Driven Care 101. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to orient everyone to the WebEx system so you will know how to participate in today's event. If you have not done so already, please call into the webinar using the audio conference information found in the Event Info tab above the slide deck. Upon joining the webinar, you will be placed on mute to avoid background noises that may distract others from listening to the webinar. If you come across any technical issues during the webinar, please chat to the host who will be able to assist you. You will have the opportunity to submit questions to today's presenters by typing into the chat box located on the right side of your screen. Click the dialog bubble on the bottom of the toolbar and it should appear. In an effort to ensure we are able to answer as many questions as possible, you may send in your questions at any point during the webinar, and we will address them during the Q&A portion of today's presentation. Our agenda for today, of course, is our welcome, which we just had. After this slide, we will have introductions of our presenters. We will discuss family-driven, what does it mean to you? We will also discuss the provider perspective navigation analogy. How long has family-driven care been a priority? We will also discuss clinical and family peer advocate perspective, barriers and challenges, the benefits of family-driven care. We will also be given feedback from the families and staff of the two agencies, and then we will discuss next steps for the Family Resource Network and for the resource program as well.
So hello everyone, this is Barbara Finkelstein. Thank you all for joining in. I'm the Senior Family Advocate here at the Family Resource Network. I have provided direct family peer support to Elmwood families in the past. I continue working with the program along with an additional family peer advocate as well as supervise the program.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Marcy Gallucci. We are so excited to be here and talk with you about something we are incredibly passionate about. I'm the RSS Program Coordinator of Elmwood Community Residents. I work collaboratively with Barbara and the Family Resource Network to foster hope and create strategies for success of youth and families in the Community Residence Program.
So we would like the participants to chat in your thoughts about what does family-driven care mean to you. And if you could just put your answers in the chat box, that would be great. And we'll take a few minutes, and then we will reveal what your thoughts are. Okay, so thus far we have a response from Brett, Child Care Coordination. Let's see. From Amanda, self-determination of care needed. Maureen, care that is focused around the family's needs, hopes, and desires. Annette, involving the family to the extent the client consents, but even when they are not directly involved, being sure to address family systems issues with the client. From Heather, family chooses goals and direction, meet family where they are. From Joanne, care is driven with family's involvement. And someone else from Heather again, family chooses goals and directions and meet families where they are. I might have read that before, sorry about that. And that the family is involved in the decision-making of their treatment goals. That's from Nicole. Let's see.
Jerry, can I just say that these are some excellent responses?
Absolutely, absolutely, I concur. Care centered on the whole family's needs and what is this? Sorry, and what they want to work on. So these are just a few of the responses, and I definitely agree. Very good. Thank you so much for chatting in your thoughts.
Thank you.
All right, yes, thank you. They all sounded wonderful, and I would share that family-driven, what it means to us is, family should always be a part of any decision-making that is surrounding their child's mental health, medical needs, and overall care. There needs to be buy-in, and the families need to be on board with the plan so that they can support their child's needs at home and collaborate with providers. We need to listen to them because their voice is very important.
From a provider perspective, families know their youth the best, and we can't just say it, we have to believe it. When we make initial contact, this is one of the very first things that Barb and I will talk about. We will ask families to share the strengths and challenges of their journey. We will validate their experience and genuinely work to understand the family system. When you start to understand the family system, how the dynamics work together, you will have a better understanding of the needs and how to best work to address them. For providers to think of it in a different way, we are a stop on a journey and they are family forever. When we have engagement, buy-in, and a genuine working relationship with families, we see increased success and meeting of goals for both youth and within the family system. So something that, from a provider perspective, I like to use this analogy with staff, that youth and family are driving the car, which is essentially, our service plan or our plan of care, and we as providers are the navigation system. As we know, there are many routes to get to our destination. There are detours, roadblocks, and many times when the route needs to change. This would be equivalent to updating safety plans, going back to the drawing board with skills to utilize when a youth responds in a specific way. It is our goal to provide information, resources, and act as a guide along the way in their journey. It is also important to remember that similar to all of us on a journey, we have a right to use navigation or not, and to change our navigation systems. So, when Barbara and I were putting this webinar together, we really thought that something beneficial for everyone would be to see how we put tools for practice in place. And so we're going to share with you a youth and family case that we were involved in and briefly describe how we navigated through this in a family-driven manner from prior to admission to discharge. It will help you to see why we are passionate about what we do. So this was a two-parent, one-step parent family. There were two older adult siblings and one adult sibling paramour, as well as a grandchild under the age of 1 residing in the home. There was also the identified teen youth who would be receiving services from Elmwood. This is a family who had had a history of services and negative experiences with service providers. In fact, Barb and I had heard some very negative comments from other providers who had found it difficult to engage the family. At one point, we were told that if our intervention did not work, this family would not be offered any other services. To understand some of the trauma, there was a significant history of sexual and physical abuse, as well as neglect for several of the family members. This affected the family generationally. We were aware of this going in, and some of the challenges that presented us in the initial meeting were families' lack of trust with providers, lower socioeconomic conditions, and compounding mental health symptoms of multiple family members. Barb and I began with a pre-admission screening in the home. Upon walking in, we knew that we were going to have to bring a level of compassion, understanding, and respect. Some of the ways that we absolutely work on developing trust and those strategies are that we always focus on maintaining eye contact. We start with some general conversation to ease for comfort. We ask parents to share the strengths, share the challenges, share what has worked and what has not. We are working on developing rapport. We are sharing information on what we can provide as far as maybe the service plan and the family advocacy and how that ties together. We are also aware that we need to be clear in our communication, and this is how we check for understanding and their level of comfort.
So this case not only features the value of family peer support and family-driven practices, it showcases the importance of cultural competency, building bridges, and family voice. So as we met with this mom for the first time, it was my priority to build a rapport and to help her understand that she was also very important, and we wanted to hear her story. To convey that her child's needs were absolutely significant and, yes, very concerning. And through this process, I would be there for her and the family as a whole. Mom was clearly struggling with her own mental health, and her priorities were highly focused on the many animals and pets sharing this tiny home. To Mom, these animals were family, and we needed to be sensitive to that. In fact, they seemed to bring her a sense of comfort and security. Although Marcy and I had cats jumping up on us and a huge, quite endeared rodent in a cage right next to where we were both sitting, among many other factors, we did keep focused. Marcy and I listened and allowed Mom and the family to share. And what they shared was they were angry and they were fed up. There were many years of services that had been unsuccessful. Their child was still aggressive, both verbally and physically, destroying the house, acting out, using foul language, and would not follow through on any directives. School was not going well, and there were no friends to speak of. The clear message we received from Mom that day was, my child is out of control, and I cannot do this anymore. We acknowledged and validated the overwhelming components here and proceeded to develop a plan with the family without judgment. It became evident that it was very important to Mom to remain involved and have input. She was also eager to meet with me regularly to work towards her youth's successful discharge to home.
From the provider and community residents' perspective, our role was to validate the concerns of the family and come up with strategies, tools, and techniques in collaboration with the family and clinical providers in an effort to try to minimize the barriers to being home. One of the very first things we worked on was separating the youth's behavior from the youth. It is very important to do that when working with families. I should also note that as providers, it's very important for us to do that with family members and their behavior as well. We also reached out to the clinical provider with the family to ensure that the service plans were matched and we were all working on the same common goals. This process was started. The youth and family both were making progress. The youth had a decrease in aggression. He had an increase in socialization. He was making friends. He was processing his anger. At this time, though, progress started to encounter barriers. There are times when the youth and family priorities or concerns are dissimilar. This was the case for this youth on many occasions, as his behavior was often recognized by the family as the biggest challenge or concern within their family system. There were times that the behavior was mentioned as the cause for many things, including some adult challenges that were well out of the youth's control. This was compounded by the mental health of others in the home. At the time, we needed to begin exploring the options and possibilities for both the youth and family without shaming, blaming, and with genuine understanding.
So as I worked with Mom and the family, there were accomplishments and progresses in areas of Mom's personal care, her daily living, and parenting skills. Mom continued to engage with her child and the program. However, we recognized that Mom was forcing some unrealistic guidelines and expectations on her child during time spent at home and at the community residence. It seemed like the entire family, 2 adult siblings, 1 spouse, and a stepfather, had built up such a strong resentment toward this youth. I was often put in a situation where I had to help mediate, though it was basically impossible for the family to see any positives or strengths. Mom loved her child and cared a great deal as well about her child as well as his future. However, she recognized that her own traumas and history were creating barriers to her parenting the way she would really like to. I must share that through the entire process, Mom's mission was for her child to be successful.
For those of you that are familiar with the Building Bridges initiative, and we will talk about it later, you are aware that most often there are family members out there who are willing and able to offer support. Together, Barb and I began working with the family on seeking out other supports for the youth and for the family system as a whole. As we did this, the conversation changed to Mom identifying that it might be better for this youth to reside for a short time with an extended family member who had the ability to provide validation, love, support, and give the time and attention needed to continue working on mental health recovery, while Mom herself worked on her own mental health recovery and physical health. Mom made the decision, with the support of Barb and myself, to reach out to her mother and have this conversation. The maternal grandmother, who resided out of state down south, was in support of the plan. We made plans for the grandmother to have regular contact with the youth in preparation for a discharge plan. She also came to visit with him and take the child out prior to discharge. We connected youth and grandma, as well as Mom, to the clinical services in grandma's community for continuity of care. Mom was a part of every plan and made every decision. It was her decision to make a plan with extended family for the benefit of the youth and the family system as a whole. As an update, Mom continues to remain a significant part of the plan. This youth continues to reside with his grandparents. The child has frequent contact with family of origin, spends significant time in the summer and holidays with them, and is really doing well.
So the Family Resource Network was founded 25 years ago by families who were struggling to access services for their children with special needs. We've made it a priority to hire parents and caregivers with lived experience, and family-driven care has always been our priority. It is our foundation. All of Family Resource Network advocates have lived experience and are credentialed. We also assist any and all new staff with obtaining required trainings to become credentialed. When a family peer advocate shares some of their own personal journey with the family, there's an immediate sense of relief, as if to say, she gets it. So we feel that the lived experience piece is very, very essential.
So family-driven care for RSS really became a vital component in 2004 when the Office of Mental Health developed the core values trainings. At the time, RSS had one adolescent residence, which is Hamptonburg Community Residence. The OMH core values and building bridges revolutionized the way children's residential care was viewed and managed. An emphasis was being put on family-driven care, assisting youth and families with having children back in their home, decreasing length of stays residentially, creating the discharge plan prior to admission, and ensuring that all families had the opportunity and voice with their youth. So just to share a little bit about Building Bridges, and we're going to talk about it a little later too, but I wanted to talk about their mission statement and what Building Bridges aims to do. So Building Bridges is a national initiative working to identify and promote practice and policy that will create strong and closely coordinated partnerships and collaborations between families, youth, community, and residentially based treatment and service providers, advocates, and policymakers to ensure that comprehensive mental health services and supports are available to improve the lives of young people and their families. RSS opened Elmwood in 2011, and this time we already had these core values. We began engagement with Family Resource Network pretty immediately, and it became quite clear that we had the same common goals, values, and a shared mission. And in 2014, Family Resource Network was awarded the RFP grant through OMH to work with Elmwood families full-time. We get them 40 hours a week. It has revolutionized the services that we can provide. We now have the ability to meet with families in their homes prior to admission, continue working with them in the home by transitioning skills learned at the residence to the home environment, and working with families to try out different safety plans, ultimately creating safer and much more successful discharges. And we are so proud of that.
Yes, we are. So the Family Resource Network absolutely supports family-driven practices. And as far as every staff, we all feel very, very supported by our Executive Director, Michelle Zuck, and all of our board members. They give us the tools to do our job. And I do want to also touch base on our incredible partnership with Elmwood Community Residents. As family peer advocates, we bring the family voice to the table, oftentimes when a family is unable to. Elmwood administration and staff have always welcomed our participation and has made it clear to us that services for the youth in their program need to be family-driven. In addition to our partnership with the Elmwood Community Residents, we continue to build our relationships with community partners as we represent the families we serve.
At RSS, we have the support of the entire administration, but especially our Managing Director, Susan Miller, and our Program Director, Nali Klimas, who guide and support us each day in this initiative. Building Bridges has been a huge component of support for both Family Resource Network and RSS, and Barb and I, along with two of our colleagues, had the pleasure and privilege of attending a Building Bridges Summit in 2015 in Massachusetts for 4 days, where we were absolutely excited to see that we were putting many of the practices in place that are recommended for successful youth and family outcomes. We are committed to this initiative and constantly striving to incorporate further recommendations into our programs. We both have also had the privilege of having many trainings with Building Bridges Director Beth Caldwell. If you ever get an opportunity to attend a training facilitated by Beth, it will revolutionize the way you engage with youth and families. We highly recommend it. So, in looking at some of the barriers that we face as clinical providers, in many cases, by the time family gets to Elmwood pre-admission process, they are exhausted. They have attempted many different avenues for help. They do not understand this language being used with them and about their child. The medical model has pushed that they know best. They have utilized a variety of services, and they are in a place with very little hope. They have also been traumatized by many systems, providers, judgments, and demands. This trauma is compounded by caregivers' own trauma history, other youth they are providing for in their home, health concerns, and often many other factors. There are times when, as a provider, we can lose sight of these critical components and focus on families exhibiting the following characteristics: aggression, disengagement, irritability, frustration, and hopelessness. We become frustrated with their response. If I can stress one thing within this training, it is that often these are trauma responses. There are underlying needs here, and it is our responsibility to invest in the hope of the families that we work with. We need to assist them in putting plans in place, help them to try new things, return to the drawing board and to team meetings to try something new. We have to think outside the box, and we need to let them know that we are there and we validate their experience. Barb has been absolutely instrumental at keeping the family-driven focus moving forward and pausing to remind myself and all of us what the experiences have been and how to continue empathy, compassion, and family-driven care even in the most challenging circumstances. In this way, the partnership and collaboration that we have has been invaluable to the youth and families that we serve.
So as a family peer advocate, I would certainly say that trust is a barrier. When I meet with a family, it does take time to build trust and rapport. There are times when a family member may feel like you are wasting their time since there have been so many unsuccessful interventions already. They want to know why this time things will be different. I try very hard to be clear that their voice matters, and I want to hear it. I will listen to anything they want to share. I'm empathetic and considerate of the path the family may have been on that has led to this point. I will not ever take offense if there is an immediate pushback. I try to instill hope and provoke thought, so that even the most challenging meetings will produce a positive outcome.
I think that this quote is really important, and I'm going to read it and then provide you with some information from the clinical perspective. So our reaction to a situation literally has the power to change the situation itself. This quote is incredibly applicable to the work that we do with families. We have the ability to strengthen, motivate, and empower based on our response and reaction, in the same way that we have the ability to distance, isolate, and encourage families to disengage based on our language, our tone of voice, and the messages we are conveying. We have made the shift and are completely committed to entering every conversation, meeting, discussion, and collaboration with the trauma perspective and strength-based focus. This is vital to assisting individuals in enacting change and making progress. For example, When we have to call and express a concern to a family, there are really two ways that you can do it. And the first way is this. Hi, Mary. It's Marcy from Elmwood. I'm calling because I'm not sure what we are going to do here. Joe became very aggressive this evening. He scared some of his peers, punched a wall, and I'm just calling to let you know. Or we can do it the family-driven Elmwood and Family Resource Network way, which is this. Hi, Mary. This is Marcy at Elmwood. I just wanted to call and touch base with you about Joe. Is now an okay time to talk? I want to share that we're really seeing great progress in Joe's communication about how he is feeling, particularly when he is angry. He's expressed his feelings on several occasions in the last couple days, discussed why he's feeling this way, and has been able to process these emotions in an appropriate manner. I know this is something you were really hoping to see more of, so I wanted to share that. I also wanted to let you know that we are noticing an increase in Joe's trauma responses when peers at the residence are arguing. He will escalate, become aggressive, and today he punched a wall in his bedroom. I know this was something that you had noted in the home when Joe was spending time there this past weekend, and he and his siblings had fought. We've talked about how this is connected to Joe's past trauma of witnessing violence and why he responds in this way. I wanted to share some ideas that we had about how we want to address this and some things we would like to try. And at this point in the conversation, I would explain to Mom in detail what some of those skills and tools are. I am incorporating her into the conversation by saying things like, how do you feel about this plan? Can you share with me some suggestions you might have? Also, throughout the conversation, I am checking for understanding and her level of comfort. This second scenario drastically changed when you put it in this perspective. It is not another call indicating that Joe is a problem, because Joe is a wonderful young man. Joe is Mary's son. We are separating the behavior from the youth. We are naming it and describing how it is a trauma response. We are discussing strength-based solutions, offering suggestions, asking for Mom's input. She is important. She is a vital component of the plan, and if this plan starts to work, we are going to help her incorporate it at home.
So our partnership with RSS, Elmwood, and Marcy in particular has been critical. As I believe you probably can tell for yourself, she is one of the most strength-based people that you will ever have the pleasure of speaking to or knowing. Marcy leaves no stone unturned and includes us every step of the way. FRN is invited to meet with families through pre-admission meeting process, which is so beneficial. When a family meets Marcy and I together from the initial point, they know what to expect and who they will see if their child is admitted into the program. Allowing your child to participate in residential services is very frightening for families. When they show up for the first time at the community residence for admission, I will try to meet them at the door so they don't see a stranger. I feel an immediate sense of familiarity, which I hope eases the process for them on some level. Family-driven practices has led to successful outcomes for families, and Family Resource Network is known in our area as being one of the agencies that are able to deliver services to what some other agencies typically call hard to serve. I'll say that word of mouth goes a long way. Families share useful information with each other and identify us as an important resource in the community. Families reach out to us when all hope seems lost, and we walk the walk with them. They know who we are, where we are, what we do, and we hope to continue to support families for another 25 years.
Similar to the Family Resource Network for Elmwood Community Residents and RSS, we are seeing successful outcomes for youth and families. We have been identified by various programs and agencies and organizations as having the ability to build relationships and connections with the families that we serve. We are incredibly proud of that, and there is nothing better as a provider to have a family have a successful discharge home and to follow up with them and see that things continue to go well.
So we do receive feedback from families. Families are generally very, very appreciative, and we receive many thanks, though we never expect them. I will share that FRN sends out monthly surveys to families to rate our performance, and they are generally very positive. If there ever is a challenge, we are swift at addressing it, and overall, we see a level of confidence from families that had been non-existent.
At Elmwood and RSS, we also have family surveys that are completed 2 times throughout the year. Generally, all of those responses are quite positive. However, if a barrier comes up, if there is a concern, we work quite quickly to address it. And I think that's very important as a provider. You know, if somebody's addressing a concern, we have to take that seriously, and we have to address it in the moment. We recognize that the wellness and recovery journey does not end at discharge and is continual throughout. Often mental health recovery requires routine maintenance, check-ins, there's progress, regression, plans need to be changed and updated, and that sometimes the family system changes. I think one of the most impressive things that Barb and I can share is when you have a family, and we have had so many of them that come in and think that something is impossible, and now they are seeing that it is possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So feedback from staff members. At the Family Resource Network, I'll share that staff do identify a sense of accomplishment and wish that this service was available to them and their families. I will share that there is a true sense of accomplishment from staff when family goals are achieved. It's extremely encouraging to them when moving forward with a very high-intensity situation to know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and hard work pays off. They reflect on their own history and share that their family would have greatly benefited from family peer support. And in addition to that, we are able to collaborate with each other here at the Family Resource Network as we approach services as a team. So that is very, very beneficial to staff.
I just want to take a minute to read the quote here. True empathy requires that you step outside your own emotions to view things entirely from the perspective of the other person. I think I spend a lot of time with the staff that I work with on even just taking 30 seconds to a minute to put themselves in a family member's shoes. If you can do that with your staff, this goes a very long way to help understand the experience. Barb and other members of the Family Resource Network have certainly come over several times throughout the year to provide family engagement trainings to the staff and really get them to understand the family-driven perspective and where families are coming from. You know, the staff feedback is that they really appreciate it. It's allowed them to have better understandings of the dynamics and the interpersonal relationships, and it encouraged them in how to work with families. Staff at Elmwood are calling families, you know, throughout the week to share strengths and to share challenges and to collaborate and talk about things. Staff appreciate families' directives and insight into strengths, challenges, and barriers. And staff are able to acknowledge that they approach situations from one lens, and with the family-driven care approach, they are able to see a broader picture and have a mutual respect for the families and situations that they're facing.
So the Family Resource Network welcomes feedback. We want to know what works and what doesn't work. So we would like to have a successful implementation of a Family and Youth Advisory Board. operating in a way that incorporates feedback from family and youth. We would like to continue hiring parents and caregivers with lived experience, and we will strive to understand and implement new developments in family-driven practices. We would also like to continue and grow in our partnership with the Elmwood community residents, as it has been such a wonderful and very, very, very rewarding experience.
So what would we like to see next for RSS in Elmwood? Well, first I'd like to highlight the family advocacy piece. We are so blessed to have such an incredible relationship with the Family Resource Network, and it really has just benefited our families and youth in so many ways. I could do a whole training on that. So we hope that that relationship continues, and we'd like to see that for the next 25, 30 years plus as well. We definitely are looking to improve our family-driven care any way that we can through trainings. We're always seeking out new training opportunities. We're working on increased transition plans. So, how can we transition the skills learned to the home in a better way? How can we help the youth have extended time at home during the transition phase? We'd like to have some more family events. Our youth and families are invited to all of the Family Resource Network events. We'd also like to see if we could do like a FRN and Elmwood event with just the Elmwood families. We enjoy having families with referrals with a family component. Sometimes it can be difficult if you get a referral from, let's say, the Department of Social Services and a child is in care and there's no identified family member. It would be nice to have youth who reside closer to Elmwood. Typically, we pull from 4 counties directly in the area. We can take youth from anywhere in the central region, and both FRN and Elmwood, we work very diligently with those families as well, but we find increased success with those who live closer. We'd like to have at least one staff member who has had lived experience. And it would be really nice on our intake committee, we have Barb representing families, to have a youth voice.
So this is the part where if you have any questions, we'd love to hear them. Thank you very much.
So first and foremost, I want to say to Bob and Marcy, thank you so much for sharing with us today on Family Driven Care 101. And you guys did an outstanding job. And we have one question so far, and we have a comment, but I believe I'm going to start with the comment first. The comment is coming from Christina, and she says, what you are discussing now really points to a shift in perspective from problem focus to solution focus. This is key in FDC, and I definitely concur with that. So the question is, can you talk about the credentialing process for family peer supports? Is it similar to adult peer support specialists?
Well, I can speak to the Family Peer Advocate credential process. As far as it has changed, when I went through the process, it was a 5-day in-person training. Now I believe it's 2-day, and then there are online modules. I'm not 100% sure on the adult services. We serve children at this point, but I'm sure we can get that information, and we can send you a link for whomever's asking that question.
Okay. I would concur with that answer, and I think if you want to know more about the Family Peer Support credentialing, you can check out Families Together in New York State's website, www.ftnys.org, I believe, and that information will help you to get through that process.
Right, and Susan Berger would be the person to speak to with questions about the Family Peer Advocate credential.
Absolutely.
And the slide that you're seeing now is also our information, so if you think of questions later on, Barb and I are always available to answer questions, answer emails. Does anybody else have any more questions? Thoughts, comments?
Okay. All right, hold on. I think we have a couple of more. Okay, this is coming from Ian Valentino, and she says, what do you do when the parent or family cannot seem to separate the behavior from the person?
I think that's a really good question, and I think that we spend a lot of time carefully discussing that. And I think really coming from a trauma perspective, when the family can understand the circumstances that have happened to their youth and how that has changed their brain, and we're describing it in ways that they can understand how that has changed their brain, why this response is happening, it's much easier for them to understand and to start to separate.
Yes, and certainly we would work with the family on helping educate them on their child's diagnosis and behaviors that are related to that.
Next question is coming from Matthew Bosley, and it is, as mandated reporters, how would you recommend developing a good working relationship with CPS such that reports get made when needed, but doing so does not undermine the relationship-building efforts and trust with the family? Excellent question.
So this is a really good question, and sometimes it is very difficult. In times when we are able, both, Barb and myself have reached out to families and encouraged them to make the calls with us. It is always much better when the family can be there, can explain what happened, and then follow through on that process. Then we're working together. We're not setting up a dynamic where we violated trust. And if, they are aware from prior to admission that we are mandated reporters, we have that conversation during the pre-admission screening, and they are well aware.
And, absolutely, the candid conversations are important from a family peer advocate perspective going into the home. If there's any sign that there could be a problem brewing, it's certainly important to confront it at that point in time and try and help the family work through whatever the circumstances are to possibly avoid that hotline call.
Yeah, I think prevention is key, and then intervention afterwards. How do we connect with the family with protective services or preventative services to put intervention plans in place so that this problem doesn't continue to happen?
Okay, any other questions? We still have a little bit of time left. Okay.
Jerry, I have a question actually for all of the participants. Did you find that this was helpful and applicable to the work that you're doing?
I'm getting yes, a lot. Very helpful.
Good.
Yes. Okay. Yes, and thank you for the link from Josh Maldonado. Yes. Let's see. I think we have another question. Definitely. Okay. A lot of yeses. Okay. All right. Now let me get to your question. Okay. It says, hi, I'm here with 3 of my coworkers as family therapists in an adolescent rehabilitation center. We would like to know what are some barriers that you have had with families struggling with relinquishing control over their child's progression, specifically in a substance use setting.
We actually, relinquish their what, Jerry? Can you explain that part again?
Yeah.
Sure. we would like to know, and this is coming from Frida Morris, okay? We would like to know what are some barriers that you have had with families, with a family struggling with relinquishing control over their child's progression, specifically in a substance use setting?
So we don't work a lot in the substance use setting. We do work with families that are impacted by substance abuse. I think that we start to change the language a little bit. You know, for families, it's so scary when your child is in another facility, and sometimes they will try to kind of like exercise that control to make sure that they're a part of things. I think from a provider perspective, what I would say is we need to make sure that they're included in every decision, in every meeting. It might be that they're exercising a form of control because they don't feel that they are, and I think it's appropriate to have a very candid conversation about how, you know, some of the conversations that we're having are maybe getting in the way of progression. Can we talk about that? Can we talk about what progress could look like, where you have the opportunity to make decisions, where your youth has the opportunity to make decisions, and how we can grow in progress together?
Right, but I think this also speaks to the whole pre-admission process.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a voluntary program that we participate in here. And, you know, everybody needs to be on board. And part of what we do as family peer advocates is make sure that families and parents and caregivers understand their rights and are completely involved and included so that they don't feel that they've lost a sense of participation and direction.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Excellent. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. And there is Bob and Marcy's information if you want to contact them. So our next webinar will be part 2 of this, and it will be entitled, How Do You Help an Organization Become More Family-Driven? And it's going to be September 12th, 2018 at 12 noon. And in order to register, you can register at the CTAC website, which is on there. And if you have any other questions, please contact us at ctac.info@nyu.edu. And on behalf of CTAC and our presenters, we thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye. Oh, shoot, I didn't see that.